Good morning. Good morning. Happy Wellness Wednesday. I hope you are well today. If you are just stumbling on my page, my name is Donna. I'm a mom. I'm a nana. I am recently retired from my job of 21 years, but not retired by any stretch of the imagination. I am a pending personal trainer, looking at grad school in a year, and activewear fanatic and entrepreneur. So that's just a little bit about me. I started Wellness Wednesday. If you're new to the page, I started Wellness Wednesday because I know and I feel that wellness is a broad topic that covers a big range of things, and that we can all be more well if we share with each other the things we've learned that have helped us along the way. Good morning, Carla. So with that said, if there's ever anything you would like to see me cover on Wellness Wednesday, I do love to learn. So feel free to reach out to me, drop a topic in my inbox or in the comments below, and I'll do a little bit of digging around and see if it's something that I can talk about in a future Wellness Wednesday. The rules are no politics, no negativity. Now, interestingly, I had a breakfast with a friend recently who watches this on a regular basis, and she said it's hard to come up with anything wellness related that's not negative. Good morning, Erica. And I said, well, there are actually a lot of wellness topics that start out negative, like depression, anxiety, fear, which is what we're going to talk about today. But what makes them not negative is how we choose to approach them. So yes, you may think that a wellness topic you have is negative, but drop it in my inbox or in the comments anyway. And as long as it's not politics related, I will see if I can't find a positive way to approach it. So today we're going to talk a little bit about fear. What is fear? Well, it's a natural, powerful, and primitive human emotion that is designed to protect us from danger. It's primitive because it goes back to what we like to call the caveman days, and it's designed for a purpose, and at that time it had a purpose. Fear often invoked the fight or flight response, which often in those days was probably flight, and it kept us safe. It was a survival mechanism. It just kept us safe from any kind of harm, real or imagined. Nowadays, there's a lot less real, imminent fear. Let's face it. We're not being chased most of the time. Most of the time, we're not being chased by bears. Some of us may feel that we're being chased by birds. But for the none of us are being chased by dinosaurs. For the most part, imminent physical fear is not an issue on most days, although some of the world is getting a little scary, and it could in fact be a real thing. So this, on a psychological level, fear is generally learned. It is learned, and it's connected to associations or traumatic experiences. As children, we are often fearless. We jump, we climb, we stick things in light sockets. Yeah, that was me. Bobby pin, electrical outlet. Yeah, not pretty. Now we know why I have such an electric personality. Anyway, the consequences, as well as sometimes extreme responses to the things that we do, associate negative connotations with things, and that brings fear. So what I mean by that is ridicule. At some point when you were a child, you may have learned, when you were a child or a young adult, you may have learned that your feelings weren't okay because of some type of mental, emotional, or physical abuse. You may have learned to think that there was something wrong with you if you were bullied or ridiculed a lot based on the way you dressed or what you looked like or how your hair looked. And what happens is we fold into that fear, and we often lose the important components of that fearless individual. Good morning, Danielle. And we don't end up taking that fearless individual. Usually happens as children, maybe young adults. We don't usually carry those very far into childhood because by then, or very far into adulthood, because by then we've learned to be afraid of a lot of things. We've learned that it's not okay for us to speak our feelings. We've learned that maybe it's not okay to move a certain way or act a certain way. There's just a lot there. So the 5 biggest fears in life, according to SciencePeople.com. And if you all ever want to look at any of the things that I use to do these lives, just send me a message, and I'll be happy to hook you up with the links to the resources I use. The 5 biggest fears in life, according to sciencepeople.com, are this. Number 5, fear of imperfection, not being good enough. I don't think I've ever felt that way. Have you? I think this is probably one of the bigger fears of a lot of people. And it leads us often to not actually completing anything because we are so hell-bent that it's perfect. And we are so busy dissecting it and overthinking it. And this is one of the ones that tends to feed anxiety too, that we never actually get it done. This is caused by bullying. This is caused by, maybe an absent parent who just disappeared on you. These are all things that lead to that feeling of not feeling good enough. So the best way around that is to remember that practice makes perfect. Done is better than perfect. And sometimes, especially like in my case, with Wellness Wednesday, for example, I thought about it and I thought about it and I thought about it. And there were days where I was like, you know what? I don't know enough. Nobody will listen to me. I don't know enough about what I'm talking about. This is pointless. And then I just finally started, because guess what? I can't get better if I don't get started. So done is better than perfect. Fear of imperfection stops a lot of things from happening. It stops a lot of dreams from being reached. Take it one step at a time. Nobody was perfect the first time they tried anything. Okay, there was probably somebody out there that's making a liar out of me because they were a child prodigy. But let's face it, anybody that has ever been successful at anything, sports, money, book writing, anything, if you go back to the beginning where they started, they probably weren't that great. They probably had a raw talent that really, really needed a lot of work to make it what it is today. So, done is better than perfect. Practice makes perfect. Remember that. Biggest fear number 4, fear of public speaking. I know a lot of people that have this issue, and I myself have had this issue. The best way with this particular fear, the recommendation is often to find a way. Yes, Miss Carla, the first step is always the hardest, is to find a way to face it. When I became the executive officer at the CCBA, I knew how to speak well in public, but I was petrified. I did much better if I spoke in front of a group of people that I didn't know than if it was a group of people I did know. And the reason why, in my head, and this was part of my social anxiety at the time, which is fed by fear, I felt like if I screwed up, the people I knew I had to face the next day, and I didn't want to do that. So I was always much better off and much better speaking to people I didn't know, because I didn't necessarily have to face them again if I botched something up. So oftentimes, the first many times that I had, but in my job, I was in a position where I had to get on the microphone. I had to speak to people. And if anybody actually had video of the first couple of times that I did that, you wouldn't have necessarily seen it from the audience, but I was shaking. I was shaking because I was petrified and I was hot. So I know my face was red. We have pictures of me where I was just beet red from the neck up. So public speaking is difficult, but there are ways that you can start working through it. You can make it silly. You can picture the audience in diapers. You guys, you've heard this before. You can imagine giving your speech as Darth Vader if you have to speak in front of public. To kind of make it silly, it kind of loosens things up. You are your own worst critic. Chances are that nobody out in that audience, whether it's 2 people or 20 people or 200 people, is going to critique your speaking as much as you are. So if you can get out of your own way, you could be a lot better. Practice makes perfect. Again, the more you the more you practice, whether it's in front of 2 people, your family, some friends, whatever, just by yourself, the more confident you become in the material that's coming out of your mouth. And the more confident you become, the less fearful you are. You can focus on that. Again, you're your own worst critic. Another great way, especially if you're getting involved in any kind of any kind of network marketing or sales, Facebook Live. Facebook Live, you're talking to everybody, but you just don't know it because you only see a few people at a time if you see anyone at all. So that is a great way to practice. And then, of course, if you really, really just need to hone in on your public speaking skills and really need that support, you can join a group like Toastmasters. And it really is worth looking at. When I first came back to the CCBA as EO, one of my board members said, you need to join Toastmasters. And I was offended because I knew how to speak and I knew how to speak well. My problem was fear. But Toastmasters, in all honesty, would have helped me get over that. Okay, so number 3, fear of change. This is a big one. I'm surprised it's only number 3 and not up there like number 1. Fear of change is huge because we have our comfort zones and we feel safe there. There is nothing to fear there. Sometimes we have big fish in little pond syndrome because maybe we've been at our job for so long that we do it so well that we're afraid that we may not be happy there, but we're afraid that if we step out of that comfort zone, now we're going to be doing something that we're not as good at, that we're not as well known at. Our identity is maybe tied up in that job, and stepping out of that means that maybe we don't think we'll be as respected as we were. We'll be the little fish in the big pond instead of the big fish in the little pond. This is things that are predictable are safe, and we like to stay there. If we are afraid to take steps or afraid to make change, then we're always going to stay there. So we have to get behind the reason. But fear of change is number 3. Number 2, and this is a big one too, fear of rejection. Think of fear of rejection, well, anything. Anytime anybody has made you feel or told you that you weren't good enough or that they didn't want you, that they didn't like you, a job rejection, a failed relationship, anything like that. Maybe you sent in a book and you got rejected. There are a lot of very famous people who have made a lot of things happen that were rejected the first 5, 12, 80 times that they tried. So it really does depend on how you look at rejection. You can reframe it, or you can let it feed your fear, or you can reframe it. So think of it as a long hallway of doors. If you're in a long hallway of doors and you knock on this one, and the person behind this door says, absolutely not, I want nothing to do with you, you can stop in that hallway and you can wallow, or you can go to the next door. And it's really, really hard to make the decision to go to the next door. But if you reframe rejection as a redirection, as, okay, for example, if you believe in God, or you believe in the universe, and in my case, I think they're the same because I think God made the universe. If this was a no, it's because God was redirecting me somewhere else. So I'm going to continue down the hallway and I'm going to knock on the next door. Number 1, the number 1 fear that we all share, biggest fears in life, fear of failure. We fear that we aren't going to do it right. And that probably leads to these other ones, that we're going to be ridiculed, that we're going to be rejected, that we're going to be embarrassed. Fear of failure is the number 1 biggest fear. And it often keeps us from making a move because we're afraid we're going to fail. Failure teaches and it drives self-evolution. And if you have a fear of failure, you may also have a fear of success. And I know that makes no sense, but they often go hand in hand together, because either one of those, failure or success, is going to subject you to have to step out of your comfort zone and learn something new or change your routine to deal with that failure or success. So those are the 5 biggest fears in life, according to sciencepeople.org. Number 5, fear of imperfection. Number 4, fear of public speaking. Number 3, fear of change. Number 2, fear of rejection. Number 1, fear of failure. So when you try new things and experiences, especially those that can't harm you, it can help you build the confidence to muscle through your fears. So here's some quick tips for getting to the other side. And again, practice makes perfect in all of these things. Number 1, try tiny new things daily, especially if you have a real fear of getting out of your comfort zone. Then try new things daily, like eating alone, try new foods, change your routine, try a new exercise class. If you have a fear of not being good enough, trying new things daily that you might fail at and embracing that fail because it teaches you something is a great way to get started. Number 2, whatever the thing is, assess the pros and cons of doing the thing you're afraid of. Figure out why you want to try it. And if your why isn't big enough to override your fear, then it's either not the real why or you shouldn't be doing the thing. Does that make sense? So what I mean by that is, you may have heard me say in the past, especially in regarding to public speaking with my social anxiety, the thing that always helped me muscle through the anxiety spells, like a time at a bonfire where I was trying to figure out how to get out of the cul-de-sac so that nobody would see me, and literally spent 45 minutes pacing in a friend's foyer before I finally went down there in 3 layers of clothes because I was so wound up about what I thought could happen, or perceived embarrassment or perceived rejection or whatever it was that I thought that day was going to happen if I showed up at this bonfire. By the way, did I mention it was mostly people I knew? See, there's a pattern there. But one thing that always helped me muscle through these fears, the fears of speaking, the fear of the bonfire, the fear of anything, is, especially if it was something that I had told somebody I would do, the fear of looking stupid or being embarrassed for not doing it, or not showing integrity by doing it when I said I would, that fear always overrode the fear of whatever the thing was. So that's what I mean when I say you need to find your why. Because if your why isn't strong enough to help you override the fear of the thing, then either you haven't dug deep enough on your why, or you shouldn't be doing the thing. Yeah, hopefully that makes more sense. So assess the pros and cons. Next thing, reframe your thinking. Already mentioned this a little bit. Instead of thinking that mistakes are dangerous, think of mistakes as meaning that you're learning. And successful people profit from mistakes. And sometimes amazing discoveries have come from mistakes. So it's necessity is the mother of invention. You do something until it clicks in place, or you do something because you have to, and you might screw it up the first time, but it's a learning process. It's okay to make mistakes, because let's face it, if you have a grown child and you spent that person's childhood telling them all the things that you learned from mistakes so that they wouldn't make the same ones, only to watch them walk out the door and do all the same things you did anyway, or make similar mistakes because they can't learn from yours, then you understand. If you learned that your children can't learn without making the same mistakes you did, even no matter how hard you try to protect them from it, then you know what I mean when I say that mistakes are a learning process. The best way we learn is to try and fail. So reframe your thinking. Mistakes are not dangerous. Mistakes are learning tools. If I make a mistake and I touch the hot stove, I get burnt, guess what? I probably don't make that mistake again, although sometimes I do, so I'm a little thick-headed too. Great discoveries come from mistakes. Here's the best way to reframe something you're afraid of. Instead of imagining all the things, and you can imagine the worst case scenario, and some people recommend that you do that. That's also a good way to feed anxiety. If you're a person that's prone to getting into that head spin about what they think is going to happen, then imagining the worst case scenario may not be for you depending on what the item is. So be very careful with that. But it can be a very good tool if at the end of it you say, what is the worst that can happen? Instead of what if this happens, or what if this goes wrong? What is the worst that can happen? Instead of why not, ask why not you. All right, approach it from I'm going to wrap it up here shortly because I know you all are busy. Approach it from a place of knowledge. Educate yourself. I cannot tell you how many times this helped me, especially at the end of relationships, when the other person was not responding well to the end of the relationship and poking and prodding and trying to push guilt buttons, and trying to push fear buttons, saying things that would get me in a tizzy, them saying things that would get me in a tizzy and get me all wound up, wondering if I was wrong or saying the wrong thing or doing the wrong thing. Approaching from a place of knowledge because I educated myself with the correct information from the correct sources made a huge difference. A huge difference. A lot of people going through divorce or coming out of divorce are operating under fear all the time. Every decision they make is made out of fear of what that other person is going to do, what that other person is going to say, especially if there are kids involved. You would be surprised at how many people have an irrational fear that that other person is going to take their child from them. It is a real thing. And if you approach that type of fear and that type of thing or any type of fear from a place of knowledge, research, educate yourself, the more you know, the more confident you can be in the decisions you're making, the things you're doing, and the ways you're feeling. And that just goes, I could give you example after example, but we'd be here all day of how just me alone, approaching it from a place of knowledge, getting the right information from the right resources has helped me in so many situations where I was fearful and anxiety-ridden and could not take a step forward. So educate yourself on anything. I asked a question on my Facebook page yesterday about what you would do if you were not afraid of anything, and somebody answered, bungee jumping looks pretty scary. And so I made the suggestion, and I agree, it looks scary. I don't know if that's ever something that would be on my bucket list, but I did make the suggestion, and I would do the same thing. Let's research it. Let's find out how many people actually get injured, how many issues there may be with bungee jumping, before we make that decision. It may not be as scary as it looks. It still looks pretty scary. But we'll talk about that another day. Practice, we already talked about this. Practice, role play, prepare. It's also part of that education process. That will help you muscle through a lot of fearful situations, especially public speaking or any kind of public anything. And most of all, if your fear is actually keeping you frozen and it is keeping you from being able to function on a daily basis, then you need to get help. Sports players have coaches. Network marketers have mentors. Writers have publishers. Get help. Find somebody that can help you through that fear, whether it is a counselor, whether it is a close friend, whether it is a mentor or a coach that you can hire. Success leaves clues. There is somebody that has been through it, somebody that has done it before, or somebody that can give you information. That's why we're here, is to give each other information to help each other be well. So, get help. If it's keeping you from moving forward, get help. You can get professional help if you feel it's that bad, and sometimes it is. Or, like I said, you can get yourself a coach, get yourself a mentor, talk to a trusted friend or family member, talk to somebody that's been through it before and started to come out the other side, because success leaves clues. Okay, so that's it. Hopefully, these few little steps, Good Morning Dawn, can help you start your 2023 with a little less fear. Maybe not a little less fear, but maybe a little bit more of an idea of how to deal with it, how to face it, and how to muscle through it, because these things can keep you from having the life that you want, whatever that is. So tackle your fear. Let's start with just these few things. And I'm sure there's going to be more on this topic later in the year. Like I said, if you found this helpful, please share it. And if you have any topics that you would like to me cover at a later date, send me a message, drop a comment. As long as it's not politics and I can find a positive spin on it, I absolutely will look into it, because I love to learn and I'm not afraid. And I may be a little bit of afraid, but I'm always going to do the best I can to arm myself with knowledge and practice and good thoughts about the times that I've been confident, and try to muscle through anyway. And you can too. If you have any questions, Don't hesitate to send me a message or drop a comment about anything I talked about today. If you found it helpful, please share. And I hope that the rest of your Wednesday is amazing. Be well. Thank you, Carla. I'm so glad you enjoyed it. I will see you next Wednesday. Be well. Bye.